Hello, good morning, everyone, once again. I hope you had some time yesterday to think about your projects, your project ideas, of the topics that we were covering yesterday. Since we are continuing today, but we are still available to reply to any of your questions that you might have in the meantime. So please feel free anytime to write down the questions in the chat. And also for maybe new ones, if you haven't participated yesterday or you forgot to write your name and email address in the chat, please do that today so we can have your contacts. And yes, we will start as announced with the PADR registration and upload to Prospect and using those online tools. And we have our colleague from the GST project, Nilay, and she will cover this session. She has also prepared the guidelines, written guidelines that you will receive as well. And you will be free also to ask any additional questions, not only during these sessions, but even afterwards through the help desk support. So if you will have any problems, you will have also the team support for this registration as well. Okay, this short break has expired, so we will continue. Thank you, Nila, once more for presenting this very, very important part of this process, because you can have a very good idea, great idea, you can even prepare a winning concept note, but if you don't register to PADR or if you don't upload timely in Prospect your concept note, you don't have a chance in that sense. Of course, it would be administratively non-compliant. So we are again encouraging you to register to PADR if you still don't have a registration, or if you have to check if everything works to upload what is and update what is needed. So take into account to do it as soon as possible for the lead applicant, because it is obligatory at this stage only for the lead applicant. And for co-applicants, it will be obligatory in the second stage when you will have to submit a full application if you are invited to do so. So yes, please try to do it as soon as possible and don't wait for the very last day, even for the online submission of your concept note. Because if something goes wrong, it can always happen if you don't submit it on time. So it's 19th of April, 4 p.m. is Cyprus time. But don't wait for the last day or the very last hour for sure. Try to prepare it and upload it as soon as possible. So we will see in the continuation with regards to the format of the concept note, how your concept note is assessed, which are the questions that are considered. So I hope it will be useful. Anytime you can write down questions, and when we will have one session finalized, then we will reply to the questions with regards to that session. So yes, you need to strictly follow the format and the instructions which are given for the concept note. My colleague Alexandra, she just showed you where you can find and download the concept note template. It is Annex A1. And apart from the sections you have there, you also have additional instructions. So please follow the instructions as they are envisaged in the template. And then you will be on the safe side. But we will go through some details through this presentation as well. So what is very important is not to exceed these 5 pages maximum. So the concept note that you prepare should not be more than 5 pages. If you have more than 5 pages, then the contacting authority may decide to exclude your concept note due to equal treatment, because if you don't respect all the rules, then it means that you are maybe in a better position than the other applicants who strictly follow all the instructions. So when I'm talking about exact instructions, that means that you need to use A4 size with 2 centimeter margins. It is written here in the 5th bullet point. And Arial 10 font characters and single line spacing. So there are a couple of technical instructions how to write which font, the margins and everything. So just follow the template and stick to these instructions as well. You should be specific, you should be precise, of course, in order to present everything that is important on only 5 pages. I would say that even it's the hardest maybe part, because you need to have a quite clear picture about the overall project that you're proposing in order to properly summarize it on 5 pages. So try to even think wider. I would suggest you also to download even the template for the full application form, even though you are not fulfilling it now and you're not submitting it, that is for sure. But it can give you an overview of what is expected, especially if you don't have previous experience in applying on EU-funded grant schemes, to know what you will have to produce and prepare in the second stage. Also, the budget and the logical framework matrix, which are to be submitted not now, but in the second stage. But just to take a look at those templates to make sure that you will be able to fulfill this later on. You should ensure coherence. So every information that you put in the concept note should be the same throughout the documents. That is logical, but at a certain point you tend to change some information, but then review the whole concept note that you prepared in order to put in line all the information to be the same. You should also use the same terms throughout the text. Try to visualize the intentions, so you can even insert some tables or illustrations or quotes from some strategic documents or some EU reports, for example. So yes, you should support your claims and plans and try to put it as simple as possible, clear, summarized, and you're allowed to insert additional tools like tables or illustrations to do so. So concept notes should provide the full information on the project, since the evaluation will be based solely on the information provided. So you cannot submit any additional reports, any additional documents, background documents, or similar to support your application. You have to do it everything and present everything in this concept note. So it is not even allowed to upload in prospect additional documents. Okay, so first part of the concept note template is a summary table where you should present your result chain. So we talked about it yesterday. So you need to have a clear picture, even maybe already developed logical framework matrix at this stage, in order to present adequately the impact, the outcomes, the outputs, and activities in this result chain. Also, you should present your target groups and final beneficiaries, and you should quantify them. You should integrate the targets in your results and refer to guidelines for understanding the context of your result chain and target groups and final beneficiaries. So make sure that you have connected your result chain with what is expected from this call and which is defined by the guidelines for applicants. So we have overall objective, we have a specific objective or the priorities that you should refer for each lot. You have themes that you can that you should address to. And also you have set of eligible and ineligible activities and actions. This is not an exhaustive list, but let's say that additional actions or activities should be complementary to the ones that are already stated in the guidelines for applicants. So this summary table is basically the starting point of your application for the evaluator or assessor. So it has to be clear. It has to be logical and precise. So I would even advise you to do the summary table at the very end when you have the whole concept in place, and then to summarize what is relevant in this initial section. If you want to impress, so do it in that table, in the summary table first. Then we have a section for description of your action. It should be placed on 2 pages. So please follow also not only 5 pages in total, but also these additional instructions for each section, how long they could take. So description of the action is on 2 pages. And on these 2 pages, you are asked to give the background to the preparation of the action, in particular on the sector, territorial, regional context, including key challenges. You should also try to present all the key issues. You should connect it. And if there is any specific analysis or study carried out to inform the design, please mention that. So mention that with clear quotes and references. So yesterday we mentioned that you should be in line and complementary, or you should build the current or previous actions, activities that are financed by the EU as a donor. And certainly you should prove it also here, because it will be evaluated. You're obliged to respect and to show that you're aware of what is happening with regards to the sector that you are covering, that you're well aware of all other current initiatives. And at the beginning of the presentation, there is a link on the European Commission report where you can find, if you are not so well informed, you can find this information. And use quotes and references wherever you feel it is relevant. Then here you should briefly outline the intervention logic, indicating the expected outputs, the outcomes and impact, as well as underlying the main risk and assumptions for the achievement of your action. So all those relevant elements of the result-based chain. Okay, then after briefly outlining the intervention logic, you should list again the plan outputs, outcomes, and impact, and you should explain them, but again in brief. As I mentioned earlier, what you put here, it should be in line, in full alignment with the summary table. You can also prepare a table here, and if needed, you can explain why are these outputs and outcomes and activities planned as such. You should certainly mention the risks and even the mitigation measures. So what will you do if such risk occur? What are your measures? And assumptions which are relevant, which are needed for your successful implementation of the project and achievement of the results of the projects. These are not under your control, as we talked yesterday. So you should explain them under this section, description of the action. You should also outline the activities proposed, including a description of linkages or relationships between activity clusters. You should describe the key stakeholder groups. So those are the groups or the individuals that we talked yesterday, that you can positively, by your action, positively or negatively influence on them, or they can influence on your action. So you should take them into account and describe the stakeholders. You should describe their attitudes toward the action and any consultations held. So we already recommended that it would be good to consult the stakeholder groups and to have even the consultations with them. And you should present in that case to what has been concluded during those consultations. It is always better to have consultations with stakeholders prior to submission of your project than not to have. So this is our recommendation. So you should also explain how your action will mainstream the relevant cross-cutting issues. So cross-cutting issues are either promotion of human rights or gender equality, democracy, good governance, support to youth, children's rights and indigenous people, environmental sustainability, and combating AIDS, if there is a strong prevalence in the target country or region. So you should tackle any of these relevant cross-cutting issues. It is also good and you're encouraged to explain how you will mainstream these cross-cutting issues, not just to say that you will be in line and that your action will address these issues, but explain the way, how. If you are stating that your action will be environmentally friendly, you should also explain how exactly this will be ensured, not only to end with this statement. You should also outline the broad time frame of the action and describe any specific factor which is taken into account. So yes, just recall what we talked yesterday, that you should always try to envisage a bit longer duration of your action than initially planned. And not only that, just to recall once more that by the indicative timetable of these guidelines for applicants, at the very end of the guidelines for applicants, there is an indicative timetable where only the deadlines for submission of your concept note, your questions, which you can ask officially to the contracting authority, and the replies that the contracting authority should provide you 11 days before the deadline for submission. Only these dates are fixed. All the other dates with regards to step 2, step 3, indication of the results and let's say envisaged contract signature are provisional dates. That means that they are not fixed. But anyhow, for the start of the implementation of your contracts, it is envisaged to be in April next year. Sometimes it can be even earlier, but sometimes a more usual is that it is even later than this provisional date, or to be more precise, a month. So try to think well in advance, because even if you will be selected to submit the full application, and even if you will be invited to pass through the eligibility check, and if everything go well, and you will be informed that you are the one lucky one to sign this grant contract, it will start with the implementation in spring or early summer next year. And if your action lasts, for example, 2 years, so maximum is 3 years, then you should think well in advance about your action, about your activities, about your results, what you want to achieve, which are the risks and assumptions, well in advance. And in that sense, just take into account that you will maybe need even more time than initially envisaged. So try to add a bit, a month or 2 or even 3 months more to your initial plan for duration. But not exceed, you should not exceed 36 months for sure. Okay, then we have this other section. So after the summary table and description of the action, we have relevance of your action. So it is a very, very important part, because relevance of the action and the points or the score that you will receive in this stage will be transferred to the second stage, to the full application phase. So the score and the points that you will receive now will be relevant also in the second step. So, but you should try to do your best in both sections in order, to be scored adequately, because in total you need to have at least 30 points to even be considered for the second stage. But okay, we will go through these details a little later on. So you should limit this part for the relevance of your action. You should limit it to 3 pages. And there are 4 main subtitles which are covered here. So you should prove and present the relevance of your action to the objectives, sectors, teams, and specific priorities of this call. You should relate to those sectors and teams directly contributing to the achievement of the objectives and priorities, which are described under section 1.2 of the guidance for applicants. So you should show and present how your action is relevant to the goal, basically the goal of this grant scheme. You should also show, as the second subtitle, relevance to the particular needs and constraints of the target country or regions or relevant sectors, including the synergy with other development initiatives and avoidance of duplication. So any duplication, overlapping is basically not allowed, not appreciated. So you should try to put rather your project and your action into synergy and compatibility with other actions, not to duplicate or overlap with other actions that are implemented or were implemented within your sector. In that sense, when you're looking at that European Commission report, also take into account that another year will pass, so see which projects have been delivered. So just take a look and take into account that you will start implementing it not so soon. Then, as a third subtitle, you should describe and define the target groups and final beneficiaries, as we already explained. You should describe their needs and constraints and state how the action will address these needs. And then we have a subsection for for the added value elements, which are already defined in the guidelines. So it is not obligatory to refer to the added value elements that are presented in the guidelines, but it is advisable for sure to try to address any of the elements. There are 6 of them, and you don't have to address to all of them. You can address only to one, you can address to more of them. It depends really on your action. And you should also describe here the relevance of your action with regards to envisaged added value elements. Okay, for the first subsection, relevance to the objectives and priorities of the call, especially taking into account the priorities of your particular lot. If you are applying to lot 2, of course, you should take a look at the priorities that are applicable for lot 2. So in the format, you should describe the relevance of the action to the objective and priorities of the call. You should make reference to call for proposal overall and specific objectives. It is not sufficient only to mention it, to copy paste from the call, but to explain how your project activities can really contribute, but in brief, of course. So it is scored, of course, the level of your complementarity and your contribution presented in the concept note. You should describe the relevance of the action to any other specific requirements and describe which of the expected results referred to in the guidelines will be addressed. So here it is not applicable because we don't have expected results in the guidelines for applicants, but you may refer to priorities and specific objectives. So just focus on that, but elaborate it in brief, clearly, and try to use a simpler language that is understandable to everyone who may read your proposal. Okay, this is the second subsection. So relevance to the particular needs and constraints of the target country, regional relevant sectors. You should include several issues. You should at first clearly state the specific pre-project situation in the target country. So let's say the situation at the time when you are preparing your proposal. If it is possible, you should include a quantified data analysis. So to give some kind of background of the sector in which you're acting, or the target country or the region. You should also provide a detailed analysis of the problems which are to be addressed by your action and how they are interrelated at all levels. So you can also use that 3 problem-solving technique. So you should certainly provide the relation to all levels by your action to the specific objectives of this grant scheme. You should refer to any significant plans which are undertaken at national, regional, or local level, which are relevant to your action, and also to describe how your action will relate to such plans, if there are any. Where the action is the continuation of the previous action, you should clearly indicate how it is intended to build on the activities or results of this previous action. So we already stressed that it is very, very important to stress how you will build on the previous action, whether this action was implemented by yourself or some other stakeholders in your sector, which are also relevant. You should refer to main conclusions and recommendations if there were any evaluation carried out. So if there is any evaluation of such program, of the action that you were already implementing, try to be in line with those conclusions and recommendations provided by the evaluators in that particular previous project, and try to be in line and complementary with that. And then you will stress and explain where the action is a part of larger program. You will explain how it fits or how it is coordinated with that program or any other planned project. So refer to those reports by the European Commission. You have it in one of the footnotes, and you have it at the beginning of this presentation. You should also explain at the end the complementarity with other initiatives which are supported by the EU or other donors, member states or others. So you should include not only EU as a donor, but also other donors. You need to be complementary with those initiatives as well. You can support your claims with some studies, papers, plans, or previous experience, but of course not as additional files that you will submit, which is not possible, but in the text. Where possible, you should plan collaboration, stakeholder involvement, and learning. Okay, now we have a focus on the target groups and final beneficiaries, their needs, constraints, and you should explain in this subsection how your action will address these needs. You can use the table if you want to make points and if you want to organize text, if it looks clear and easier to understand. You should present the following details. You should give a description of each of the target groups and final beneficiaries. You should quantify them when it is possible, and include selection criteria, how you have selected and established that these are your target groups and final beneficiaries. You should identify their needs, what are their needs, what are their constraints, how you are addressing their needs and constraints with your action, and demonstrate the relevance of the proposal to the needs and constraints. Explain if you had any participatory process or you plan to have participatory process through which you will ensure the participation of the target groups and final beneficiaries that you have identified. Okay, we already explained a couple of times that you should address particular added value elements which are listed in the guidelines. It's not obligatory, but some points are already dedicated to this criteria. So it is better to try to address some of at least one added value element or more of them if possible. Okay, there is also a checklist as part of this template at the very end. You will delete this checklist and the instructions which are at the end of the template. but it is provided, this checklist is provided for you for self-guidance purposes. So I advise you to follow the questions in this checklist in order to make sure that you will satisfy all the relevant criteria and the elements that are asked from you. You should follow the instructions. So each question should be answered. You should use appropriate font and all other technical instructions. And you should not exceed the maximum number of pages per section and in total. So 2 pages for description of the action, 3 pages for the relevance of the action, and 5 pages in total. Okay, with regards to some changes that you will be able to do in comparison from the concept note stage to the full application stage, you will not be able to modify much the elements that you have already submitted in your concept notes, except from some changes that are that we will go through now. We already mentioned yesterday that the EU contribution part, so the grant part, may not vary from the initial estimate that you have done now in the concept note phase. It cannot vary more than 20%. So EU contribution part may not be lowered or increased for more than 20% of your initial estimate. So, for example, if you are asking 100,000 euros for the EU contribution, it cannot be lower than 80,000 or higher than 120,000, if I have calculated correctly. But make sure you don't exceed or surpass this 20% difference, because in that case, your full application will be administratively non-compliant. Okay, you can always also adapt the percentage of co-financing, but the minimum should be respected, and the maximum as well. So the minimum co-financing is again 5% up to 40%. Okay, so the lead applicant in the full application stage may add or remove or replace one or more co-applicants or affiliated entities only in duly justified cases. So just to stress, under Lot 2, there is an obligation to have a partner. So in that sense, it is not possible to remove. If you have only one partner, you will not be able only to remove this partner and stay alone as a lead applicant. You will need to replace, at least to replace this partner. And the new partner or even the affiliated entities must be of a similar nature as the initial one. But just to stress that in that case, you will really have to provide a good justification in order for this replacement to be accepted by the committee. So try to avoid this. Make sure that your partnerships are already formed in solid and long-term basis in order also to secure the sustainability of your project results and outputs even when the project implementation ends. Maybe just to stress another difference, which was one of the questions before the short break. What is the difference between the co-applicants and affiliated entities? Apart from what Mihai has already explained, just to stress that co-applicants in comparison to affiliated entities can receive a part of the grant, so they can receive a part of the money to be transferred on their account, and they can use this money for the implementation of activities or for procurement, whatever is envisaged. But on the other hand, the affiliated entities cannot. So they can only be reimbursed or the costs can be covered from the grant for the travel costs and for per diems. So they cannot receive a part of the money as affiliated entities. So this is also one of the differences. Okay, with regards to changes, in exceptional or unforeseen circumstances outside the scope of the applicants, you can adjust the duration of the action. Of course, again, you need to have a proper justification, which are those unforeseen circumstances. For example, the risk of action not being carried out. So only in that sense, you can try to adjust the duration of the action and propose it in full application phase, but it cannot go beyond the limits which are imposed by the guidelines for applicants. So the minimum is 12 months, the maximum is 36 months. But try to avoid this as well. Try to envisage and put some additional, allow yourself some additional time, because basically your proposal, your full application will become the part of your grant contract, and you will be obliged to proceed in line how you have already envisaged. And okay, during the implementation, there are also some possibilities to extend the implementation of the action or to rearrange, reorganize some activities. But each time when you will do that, you will have to provide a solid justification. So try to envisage more time for implementation of particular activities and for the action as such in total. Anytime you can replace your own contribution. So this is co-financing part of minimum 5%. You can replace it by other donors' contributions, but surely it cannot be EU. You should follow some strict rules there. So take care, you don't duplicate, you don't ask for the same donors to finance and co-finance your actions. But if you will have any possibilities for co-financing of your action from other donors, you will be able to change it anytime. Okay, then these are instructions that you will have to provide an explanation and justification for all the replacements or adjustments that you may have made in Annex A2, which is the full template for the full application, which will be submitted in the second stage if you are invited to do so. If the explanation or justification that you have provided there, that you will provide there, is not accepted by the evaluation committee, the proposal may be rejected. Okay, we also have some tips for preparation of good concept note. In brief, even though we passed through all this, but just to have it on one slide, you should follow, allow, learn, and have. Regarding following, you should follow the instructions, all the instructions in the templates for submission of concept note in this stage and later on for the full application without any exception. You should allow sufficient time for preparation, even though it seems that you have enough time. It's in almost 1 month time. Allow yourself and start working on the concept not immediately, or when you establish a good and solid partnership, start with meetings and start with the preparation in order to prepare a good quality proposal. Also, what is important for planning, that you should be aware and you should learn about the EU procurement procedures. So in Annex 4 to the future grant contract, so these are the annexes that are available on the same link, where the call is available, where the guidelines for applicants are available, where this Annex A1, A2, all these annexes that are relevant either for this first or second step. You can also find the zip folder with all contract annexes, future contract annexes. And one of them is Annex 4, where it is described how you should follow the EU procurement procedures. And from our side now, it would be good to stress, even I mentioned it even yesterday, that you should consider to have enough time for planning, because in order to procure some services or equipment, depending on the value, you will have to follow some procedures. So at first you will have to prepare, you will have to do the market analysis, or if you already did the market analysis, you will probably have to, you will have to do another market analysis to update if there is any changes on the market with regards to services and supplies that you plan to procure. Then you will have to prepare the tender documentation. You will have to follow some templates. So for higher value, let's say procurement, you will have to use many documents that you will have to prepare and fulfill and adjust to your needs. Then you will have to invite the selected candidates, or you will have to publish your call for this procurement procedure. And you will have to allow enough time. In some cases, it's minimum 10 days, and in some cases, it's even 30 days for the submission of offers. So a lot of time can elapse only for these two steps, so prepare, or even three steps. So market analysis, you need some time to prepare the tender documentation, especially if you don't have previous experience. Also, to allow enough time for the potential candidates to prepare their offers. Then you will have to evaluate these offers, prepare the evaluation report, and then to proceed with the contract signature and implementation, let's say, of that procurement. So you will not be able to start immediately. Okay, I plan to engage these experts to start the survey, or to start, I don't know, to make a research or whatever it is relevant for your project. You will most probably have to do the procurement procedure first, because it is obligatory for any amount that is about 2,500 euros. But with regards to this, we will probably provide you much more information in the second phase, if you will be invited to submit the full application. But at this point, it's good to take a look at the procedures, or to remember what we have advised you here, to try to calculate a bit more time also for these procurement procedures to be implemented first. Okay, so yes, what I wanted also to say, that in that sense, for those of you who don't have previous experience in procurement, EU procurement procedures, within your staff or within the staff of your partner, then it would be advisable to envisage even the procurement of such services. So to procure the procurement experts, or one procurement expert who will support you in your procurement procedure, especially if you have planned to procure a lot of services and to buy equipment, a lot of equipment, because under this lot you have the possibility to procure up to 30% of the total budget of the action. Up to 30% you can envisage for procurement of equipment. It's certainly not obligatory, but this is the highest limitation that you have. So if you have a lot plan to buy a lot and to procure a lot of services of external experts, then maybe even, and if you don't have experience, to have a procurement expert, external one who will support you in this process. It will certainly make your life easier, and it is allowed. And okay, we also said you need to do the market research at this stage and to see the amount of the particular services and supplies that you plan to procure, and then to envisage enough amount for the proposed budget. There are just a couple of slides with regards to other tips for the good concept note. Don't overpromise. Don't be over enthusiastic. It's good to be enthusiastic, but try to calm down a bit. Even if you achieve more later on, it's better than to overpromise and not to achieve what you have promised or what you have envisaged. You should be as realistic as possible, even though, of course, it's not so simple at this stage to be realistic and to know what will happen in 1 or 2 years' time. But try to think widely in that direction. You should show that you have undertaken the research on problems identification, that you have that you make a clear reference to the information sources and methodologies used. So each time when you use your some sources of information, it's better to put from where this information comes from. If there are official documents, even better. Ensure that the components naturally link together. Also ensure the coherence between problems, activities, and expected results. We already stressed that a couple of times. You should make detailed reference to your past experiences and how they are relevant to the proposed action. If you have similar past experiences, you should highlight your comparative advantage, and you should not forget the visibility requirements. With regards to lessons learned from previous calls and our previous experience, it is, as we said at the very beginning, at the first, on the first slide, our recommendation was to read carefully the guidelines for applicants and relevant annexes. But start with the guidelines for applicants, read them thoroughly. You will find basically answers to all your questions. But if you will have additional questions or doubts, or if you need additional interpretation of some provisions of the guidelines, you can, of course, always ask questions through the official email of the contracting authority, which is stated in the guidelines. And also, you can ask questions through this GST support help desk. You will also have the email later on. Anyhow, you should follow this Europaid website where you have downloaded all the documents of the call, where also the questions and answer document will be published. So it is envisaged to have even 2 such documents, because we had a lot of info sessions until now, also the contracting authority, of course. And we were collecting the questions that were asked on all these sessions, either in person or online. And the answers will be published in this Europaid website for everyone to have equal access to all the information. So there are no possibilities to reply separately only to one potential candidate or applicant. So certainly all relevant questions that you will ask will be published on equal terms and available to everyone in order to ensure the equal treatment. You should make sure to use the templates which are provided and abide by the instructions, as we said, with regards to number of pages, font, content, and documents. If you will have a need to contact the help desk and to seek for additional support or consultation, you should do it as soon as possible in order for us to organize timely to support everyone that has asked for such support. The concept note should be prepared carefully to ensure the validity at the full application stage. We mentioned that some elements can be modified only in some exceptional and duly justified cases, and you will be asked to submit the full application. Concept note should be prepared keeping the logical framework matrix in mind. Even if you're submitting it later at full application stage, it would be good at least to consult this template for the ones who don't have previous experience, of course, and to have a clear logical connection and intervention in mind. You should integrate project management. You should integrate communication, stakeholder involvement activities in the overall action plan. You should consider timing for sure, not to be late. Don't take things for granted. So for the ones who have previous experience, they are very well familiar about the procedures, especially the reports that during the implementation and at the end of the implementation, namely the final report will have to be submitted. The narrative and financial part. So basically, don't take this for granted in sense you are proposing a good project, you're asking a certain amount of money, and that you will certainly receive this amount of money any case. So you will have to abide and you will have to follow the provisions of your grant contract. And certainly you will have to prove all the expenditures that you have made during the implementation of your project, and on the basis of the actual cost, of the costs of the expenditures that you really have spent for the implementation of activities, the exact amount will be considered and reimbursed, let's say, at the very end for the final payment. You should list all the target groups, final beneficiaries within the scope of the action. You should quantify the data for each target groups and final beneficiaries. And if you're not certain in your affiliation, better not to include any affiliated entities. That is advice. You can plan associates, but they are not mentioned in this concept note stage. And you should sign the declaration. As a lead applicant, you should sign the declaration that is also available at the Annex A1 in the concept note template. And you are signing it on behalf of all the applicants. So you should make sure that co-applicants will indeed be ready to take part in the full application stage. As Nilay has explained during the morning session, you should upload online via Prospect platform the concept note together with the declaration by the lead applicant, following the instructions given in the Prospect user manual. You will receive an automatic confirmation of receipt in the Prospect profile, and you also have received on chat detailed instructions prepared by GST project, where you can follow instructions how to register and how to submit your proposal later on. As I mentioned earlier, there are other fixed dates, 2 other fixed dates in the indicative timetable, apart from the deadline for submission, which is 19th of April until 4 p.m. Cyprus time. You can ask officially the contracting authority on this email, which is in this slide, not later than 21 days before the deadline for submission of concept notes, which is 29th of March. So the contracting authority has the obligation to provide you answers no later than 11 days before the deadline for submission of concept notes. It's basically 8th of April. So because there are a lot of questions that were asked in previous info sessions and trainings that we already had, most probably it will be published twice. So first and second set of questions. So please consult the Europaid web pages to receive this information, to look at the answers to all the questions, because even if you haven't asked any of the questions, it is better to take a look, because maybe you haven't even think of certain issues, but the other ones have asked, and in the answers you will find your way out, or you will be more certain that you are going in the right direction. So just to stress here that any questions regarding the prior opinion on the eligibility of the lead applicant, co-applicant, affiliated entities, eligibility of action or specific activities, it is not allowed for the contracting authority to give the prior opinion on the eligibility criteria. So any question that you will have regarding, am I eligible? Is my partner eligible? Is this activity eligible? Can I propose this action, this activity? It will basically not be answered directly in order to ensure equal treatment of all the applicants. And basically, it's not even possible to give a prior opinion, because when your concept note comes to the evaluation committee, voting members and assessors that are supporting the voting members, basically then when the overall picture of your project is clear, then it is only possible to talk about the eligibility. So take that into account, that such questions will not be directly replied, but you will be basically informed about the eligibility criteria, which is stipulated in the guidelines. Okay, I already said that there are no individual replies. All replies will be published on the DG International Partnership webpage, and also on the project GST project webpage. If you have some registration questions for PADR or for online submission via Prospect, there is also additional IT help desk. So there is a help desk from the GST project, where you can also ask support and you can ask support official one from the IT help desk from the contracting authority services via online support. This is the email, a relevant email where you can ask such IT support. Okay, so we passed the first session for this second day of training. So I assume that we have received some questions in the
Yes, we
meantime.
received. Thanks, Ivana. We didn't really receive a lot of questions, but we received one question.
Okay.
I will try to share this list that I'm keeping with you now. Let me share this. Is it possible to have more than one applicant, co-applicant? I mean, yes, it is possible for lot 2. If you are applying for this particular lot of the call, you need to have a minimum of 2 partners, whereas one is established in the Republic and another one in TCC. This is a minimum, but in addition to those 2 people in those 2 entities in the partnership, sorry for this mistake, individuals cannot apply for lot 2. It's possible to have additional co-applicants, and these additional co-applicants, they can also come from other EU member states or European Economic Area member states, or they can be established in pre-accession countries to the European Union. I have some experience in this preparation of concept notes. Sometimes there is this strange theory that we should have as many co-applicants as possible. You're not going to achieve any additional scores if you have a lot of co-applicants in your action, but if they are meaningful and if the partnership is meaningful, then yes, this is a good idea. But also bear in mind that whenever you have partnership, that needs to be managed as well, so try to be reasonable there. And there was another question, just to send the presentation by email, as this is extremely important. We've shared the presentation with you on this chat, and we will follow up with English and Turkish and Greek versions of the presentation. This is why I'm reminding you all the time to kind of register on this webinar in terms of writing your email, so that we could send all this information to you. I've noticed during the presentation that you were a little bit maybe puzzled with this terminology: lead applicant, co-applicant, affiliated entity, and then associates. At the end of the day, just to mention, associates are organizations that are taking part in the project, but they are not grant beneficiaries. They are not considered grant beneficiaries. And what does it mean? It means that in the budget, you can browse through these templates for full application form, and the budget itself, you will see there that there are certain budget lines for the associates. A general rule is that they don't really participate in the project's budget apart from per diems and some other small scale costs. It's described fully and in detail in the guidelines for applicants. Whereas affiliated entities, they can actually take part in the budget to the same extent as co-applicants and applicants. But with these affiliated entities, also try to be careful, because there needs to be a link, a capital link or a legal link between the affiliated entity and the applicant. A usual typical case would be if you have, let's say, a public utility company which is established by a certain town, and then this town is the establisher of this public utility company, or there is a civil society organization that has established a social business, and they are the founder of this business, and so therefore there is a legal and as well the capital link between the two. If you are in doubt, probably the best advice is try to have co-applicants, forget about these affiliated entities, unless you are in these specific situations. If it happens that you make a mistake in prospect, it is possible then to kind of like, if I can say, upgrade affiliated entities to the co-applicants level. But as I said, try to read the guidelines also. I know that this is a very specific language. People are sometimes puzzled with this terminology and so on, but I just wanted to explain a little bit. And let me see if there is anything in addition in the chat. No. I would propose that we now make a little bit of a longer break so that also you and the translators could rest a little bit. I have 11:55 now, so I would propose that we break for, let's say, 20 minutes and then come back at 12:15. Thank you, and then see you in a while. Thanks.
Hello to everyone. I hope that you managed to get some rest and that you came back to our second session for this second day, and at the same time the last session of our training, but certainly not the last time that we spend some time together. So as you were informed, you are able to ask our support over help desk, and certainly if you'll be the one submitting this concept note and be invited to submit a full application, somewhere after the summer, we will organize another set of trainings for the preparation of the full application. So don't worry, you will be covered in the second stage as well. Okay, so let's move on. This second and last session today is the concept note assessment. So we'll go through the questions that evaluators and assessors are asking, and they need to provide an answer when they're examining any of your concept notes. So you will be informed, and I would advise you to follow these questions, to take them into account, to read them carefully, and in order, to make sure that you receive a higher score by reflecting already in your concept note the sufficient replies on those questions. Okay, so assessment process. So your concept notes are assessed by evaluators and assessors. So I already mentioned that. Their average scores are summed up, and the concept notes are ranked according to them. So assessors are basically supporting the evaluation committee in case there are a lot of applications, which is usually the case. And evaluation committee is examining their scores, and they are summing up their scores, and then they put a rank list of the most successful concept notes. What is done during the evaluation? So after the submission of your concept note, after the deadline for submission, is strictly confidential process. All parties that are involved have to abide the principles of confidentiality, impartiality, and no conflict of interest. So the process should be confidential. They should not disclose to anyone outside the evaluation committee who are the applicants, what are the project ideas. So everything need to stay confidential. They should be impartial in their examination of your concept notes. They should be, objective when they are reviewing your proposals. And if there is any conflict of interest, if they are connected, there is a clear definition in which cases it is considered to be a conflict of interest. So in that sense, any assessor or evaluator, if they will be in the conflict of interest, so for example, if they're a member of their family, a applied as applicant or co-applicant or something like that, they should declare it and not be not participate anymore in the procedure. So the lead applicant whose applications have not been pre or provisionally selected will be informed about the scores obtained during the evaluation. So you will receive the scores breakdown by section and subsection of the evaluation grid. Later on, we have the exact look and questions of the evaluation grids and distribution of points per each section in the evaluation grid. And if you are not provisionally selected for the second step, you will certainly receive the scores which you have received, and maybe even with some additional comments and justification provided by the evaluation committee. As I already stressed, that you have to have to score minimum 30 points out of 50 in total. So we have two sections. One is description of the action, one is relevance for the action. Each of them have their maximum scores, which is basically divided, these 50 points divided in two sections. So 25 points for each section. And you should score in total at least 30 points to be considered for pre-selection. If there are too many applications which have 30 points, in that sense, it's not certain, even if you pass this threshold of 30 points, that you will certainly be invited to submit the proposal. It will depend on the rank list that will be prepared in line with the total scores of all the applicants. And to stress once again that your score, which is received under the relevance of the action, so this is the second section, is transferred to full application form evaluation. So it is very important to put additional effort here, but also in the description of the action in order to receive at least 30 points, but preferably much more. And then, how could you use the assessment grid that is provided in the guidelines for applicants? You will not be in the position to assess officially your proposal, of course, but you can be familiar with the questions that are asked there for the assessment, and you can always ask some of your colleagues, maybe when you prepare the concept note, to provide you the critical remarks or to provide you an opinion, and to try to assess your concept note from their perspective, from their point of view, in line with the questions that are stipulated in the grid. It will help you to self-score yourself. You're too partial if you do it by your own. So if you're the one who prepared the concept note, then do the critical assessment. Of course, that you should take it into account, all these questions, in order to prepare the better concept note. But on the other hand, if you want to really self-score yourself, you should give it to your colleague or a friend or whatever you feel, and who would be available and willing to review your concept note. So it could be valuable even for them to give you the feedback, because basically it's not that all assessors and evaluators can be experts in all the sectors and fields that you might propose your project. So take into account to use simple language, which is understandable to everyone. So even the people who are not so involved in your work can give you a critical remark following the questions from the assessment grid. Okay, so these are the questions. So you can see that the first question under the first section, relevance of the action, is asking how relevant is the proposal to the objectives and priorities of the call, or any other specific requirements stated in the guidance for applicant. Are the expected results of the action aligned with the priorities defined in the guidance for applicants? So your results should be in line with the priorities which are defined in the guidance for applicants. So this first subsection is quite important. You can see it in the second column, where the subscore of 5 points is multiplied by 2 because of its importance. So it's really, really important for you to show that your proposal is relevant to the objectives and priorities of the call. Then you have these other questions, which we basically have passed already, to address and to show how relevant your proposals is to the particular needs and constraints of the target countries, region, or relevant sectors. How clearly defined and strategically chosen are those ones which are involved, which are final beneficiaries and target groups, if you have addressed their needs and constraints, if you have defined them, and if you have addressed them appropriately. So you cannot just address, but you need to address all these issues appropriately. And the last subsection for the relevance of the action is, does your proposal contain particular added value elements? So you can see here that subscore for added value elements, it's 5. Is the same as for other subsections, only for the first subsection of the relevance of your proposal to the objectives and priorities of the call is multiplied by 2. So the maximum score here is 10. And in total for the relevance of the action, it's 25 points. For the design of the action, we again have this 25 maximum points for the whole section. But we have one question more, and there is no multiplying by 2 any of the issues that should be tackled here. So each subsection can give you maximum 5 points if you take into consideration what it is needed to be addressed here. Okay, I would not read these questions from the grid. They are available not only here in the presentation, but they are also available in the guidance for applicants. But in next slides, we will have some additional questions that could be relevant from our previous experience, how assessors are reviewing your concept notes and which questions in addition they might ask themselves when they are doing this review. But first, just to mention that some important concepts, so you need to be relevant, credible, consistent, and coherent. We basically tackled all of these important concepts, but just to sum up here on the one slide, you need to closely link the objectives to the objectives to be reached. So you need to be relevant for this call. You need to be credible. What does it mean? Ambiguous and easy to interpret. So use tables, use reference to important documents.
Αναφορά σε συγκεκριμένα έγγραφα, εάν κάτι από αυτό τα έγγραφα είναι πολύ σημαντικό, μπορείτε ακόμα και να το αναφέρετε.
Varsa herkesin uzman olmayan insanların da anlayabileceği bir dilde yazılmış olması lazım. Basit bir dil kullanılması lazım. Bunun yanında tutarlılık önemli. Yani planlama ve sunuş bakımından teklifinizin bir bütün olarak taşıdığı benzerliğin ölçüsü olarak kullanılıyor tutarlılık. Farklı kavramlar, terimler kullanmamalısınız. Her şey birbiriyle uyumlu olmalı. Eğer sonradan bir şey değiştirecek olursanız lütfen kavram belgesinin tamamını
Εάν μήπως στην περίληψη το έχετε ήδη αναφέρει ή αν αναφέρατε κάτι διαφορετικό. Να υπάρχει δηλαδή συνέπεια σε ολόκληρο το κείμενο. Και να...
Coherent, make sure that you follow the intervention logic. You need to respect internal coherence, looking at how the various internal components of an intervention operate together to achieve its objectives, and you have to consider external coherence, so looking at how interventions within the same area and or policy can work together. So take into account these important concepts which you have here summed up in this one slide. Okay, so when the assessors are assessing the relevance of your action, I will read these questions because I think it's very important, but you will have them in the presentation as well. So one of the questions is, do the objectives and priorities outlined in the application follow the objectives and priorities laid down in the guidelines for each lot? So make sure you refer to the lot on which you're applying. If you're applying on more than one lot, it is possible, but then adjust the objectives and priorities for that particular lot. Don't make copy-paste on both in both concept notes. So you should adjust it to the lot that you're applying. But only as a lead applicant, you can apply only once per each lot. So you can be a lead applicant in each lot only with one concept note, but you can be co-applicant in another concept note, in another proposal. And for the co-applicants, just to recall, they can be co-applicants in more than one proposals. But depending on the lot on which you're applying, please adjust the text or focus only on one lot and prepare one proposal adequately. Are there specific references to relevant sections in the guidelines? So make sure that you put such references as well. Does the application address the needs and constraints of the applicants, target groups, and final beneficiaries? How well are the needs and constraints identified or defined and addressed? Is the information provided on local conditions comprehensive and concrete? Is data presented to convince on the necessity of the proposed intervention? Are link or duplication to with other interventions showed? How well are those involved defined and proposed to be addressed? Are the target groups clear and quantified and seem comprehensive and strategic to the action? And address appropriateness of the proposed intervention strategy. When the assessors are looking at the design of the action, so this could be some additional questions that you should take into account. Are the problems to be addressed clearly outlined? You can use, as I mentioned earlier, you can use even some tables to be more representative, to be more clear in your intentions. Does the proposed intervention strategy reflect the problems identified in this situation analysis? Is additional information needed on activities planned? Are any external factors considered and analyzed? Are stakeholders mentioned and analyzed? Are the activities feasible and do they make sense? Are the activities sufficient to reach the planned objectives and results? If not, are complementary measures described? Concreteness or level of detail of the planned activities and connectivity between components? Feasibility of the proposed project duration? Is it in line with the proposed action plan? And internal logic of the proposed intervention strategy, how it is presented in terms of formulating connected, concrete, and time-bound activities, achievable and measurable results, and project-specific objectives. Are the results clear, measurable, and realistic? So take these additional questions into account when you're preparing these two sections in your concept notes. With regards to notification of the results for this concept note phase, apart from the fact that we mentioned that you will be informed on the scores if you're not invited, if you're not pre-selected for the second phase, you will be informed about your scores, maybe with some additional explanation provided by the evaluation committee. But if you are invited for the second full application phase, then you will receive, so the lead applicant, to be more precise, will receive a letter indicating the reference number of the application and the respective result. This letter will automatically appear online in your prospect profile, of the lead applicant. And the pre-selected lead applicants will subsequently be invited to submit full applications. So if you satisfy this minimum number of points, which is 30 out of 50, but not only that, if your concept note reaches, let's say, the rank list, in the sense that, you know, what evaluation committee does. So they sometimes need to reduce the number of concept notes, even though you have passed this minimum 30 points threshold. Why is that? Because it would not be fair to invite all of you to submit and to prepare the full applications if there is not enough available funds. So what they do, so for example, somebody scored 50 points, somebody is 49, somebody is 47, 45, and so on. And they make a list in line with the points. But on the other hand, they're calculating, they're summing up all the amounts under each lot, which are asked for each application, because we have basically quite wide possibility from 50,000 euros to 200,000 euros for lot 2. And it depends on the value and the amount each applicant are asked and their scores. The evaluation committee calculates up to from 200 to 220 of percentage of the available budget. So for example, if for lot 2 we have 1 million, they will calculate up to 2 million amounts for each application in line with the rank list with the scores. So that means that if there are a lot of very good quality proposals, that even if you pass this 30 points threshold, that you will not be surely invited to submit your full application. You might be. It will really depend on the number of proposals and the quality of other proposals. Why they are asking more than 100? So if the contracting authority invites only the concept note applicants who has passed up to 1 million in this lot 2, then, you know, it is always possible for some of them not fulfill the full application stage proposal correctly, or they don't submit their proposal timely, or if they don't pass the eligibility check, the check of the documentation to support what you have claimed in the previous steps. So that's why the contracting authority wants to make sure that all the money that is available in the financial envelope for each lot, that will be disbursed and that all the money will be contracted at the very end. So they invite more applicants than it is possible to finance in order to ensure enough quality proposals to conclude contracts in line with the available amount for each lot they have. The application process, how does it look? So at first, when your concept note is submitted, it will be checked for administrative purposes. So first is administrative check. And in some cases, if there is a need for some clarification, you might be requested from the contracting authority to provide such clarifications. After that, if you pass the administrative phase, your concept note will be evaluated against the criteria which is set out in guidelines. It is called step 1. So the criteria we already passed in details during this presentation, but you will find it also in the guidelines for applicants. If you pass the following phase, you will be asked to submit a full application, which is considered under step 2, and your full application will be evaluated. You will have enough time to prepare the full application with all other relevant documents that needs to be submitted, and you will be supported, as I already said, through GST project, also through this questions and answers tool and possibility to receive official answers that will be available to everyone from the side of the contracting authority. We will also ensure help desk support. So don't worry if you pass at this stage, second stage of step 2, you will have a similar support like now. If you will pass this step 2, you will be invited to submit the supporting documents upon which the eligibility check is done. And it is step 3, the final step. If you pass the final step of the eligibility check of supporting documents, then you are invited to sign the grant contract, but in any case, the contracting authority may ask for some budget revisions and some further clarifications before the contract signature. So this is, in short, the whole process for you to be aware. That's why it takes a lot of time, especially if there are a lot of applications, in order to assess all the applications in the first step and second step. The time is certainly needed. If you pass the concept note phase, what follows next? So you will have to submit the full application. You will follow Annex A2 template, which is part of the call on the same link. The same as for step 1, the first what is done when you submit the full application is administrative check again. And if you pass the administrative check, then your full applications are evaluated based on selection criteria and award criteria. Selection criteria your financial and operational capacity will be assessed. So what does it mean? Basically, your operational capacity is your management capacity. If you have any previous experience in managing the same or similar projects, so you will have to prove that you really have operational capacity and that you have enough staff to manage this grant properly if you receive such possibility. And also your financial capacity. So you will need to submit, and even later on with supporting documents, but at this stage you will have to provide information about the financial stability, that you have enough sources of funding, the activities under this future grant contract, because I already mentioned that the final payment you will receive at the very end from the side of the contracting authority. So you will certainly receive after the contract signature, after a certain period of time, you will receive a pre-financing payment, then most probably depending on the duration and the value of your grant, you will have an interim payment, which will follow after the approval of the interim report that you will have to prepare and submit with all the supporting documents. And at the very end, after the approval of the final report, the final amount, the final payment or payment of the balance is done. So you need to secure you need to have financial stability to pay all the invoices until the end of the project. You cannot say that you don't have money and that you need to receive the final payment from the contracting authority in order to pay the bills. No, it's not feasible. So make sure that you present it properly in the second stage. And just, I wanted to inform you to be aware of that as well. And then if you pass this selection criteria, so it is either you satisfy financial operational capacity or not, but then you are evaluated on the basis of the award criteria. And award criteria are quality of the applications in relation to the objectives and priorities set forth in the guidelines. They include relevance of the action, which score is taken from the concept note phase. Then there is another evaluation and assessment of the design of the action, of effectiveness and feasibility of your action, sustainability of your action, budget and cost effectiveness. But all these details we will pass through when you will have to prepare for the second step. If you will be invited to submit a full application, we will not go into details now. If you want to know, you can check the detailed evaluation grid on pages 35 and 36 of the guidelines for the award criteria in the step 2. What follows if you pass the full application phase? I already mentioned there is an eligibility check. A table first is drawn listing the applications which are ranked according to their score. The highest scoring applications will be provisionally selected until the available budget for each lot. And in addition, a reserve list is drawn up. So in this stage of full application, it's not the same as in the stage of concept note. So they invite all the applications up to 200% or 220% of the available funds for each lot. But when it comes to the full application for the eligibility check, only up to 100% of the available amount for each lot are invited. And only the reserve list is drawn up if more funds become available during the validity period of the reserve list. Because in some cases, it can even happen that when it comes to the verification and examination of the supporting documents that you have to supply in step 3, that some of you maybe will not be able to satisfy that, and that is why there is a reserve list. What follows if you pass the full application phase? Yes, you will have the eligibility verification only for the application that have been provisionally selected according to their scores and within the available budget for the call for proposal. Already explained that. And you will receive eligible applicants will receive award letters from the contracting authority, and then the grant agreement or the grant contract is being prepared. What after the grant award? If you will be awarded with the grant contract, it is that you will be lucky one, but bear in mind that grant contract has some obligations, legal obligations. It's basically you're signing a legal document that you need to respect and follow. And in that sense, the lead applicant who is applying as a lead applicant is the beneficiary identified as the coordinator, the main interlocutor, the only one who will officially communicate with the contracting authority, the person who will sign the contract in the name of the lead applicant, and it will be responsible for the financial implementation of the contract. Because the contracts are signed in the name of the partnership by the lead applicant. So co-applicants do not sign the grant contract, even though they also bear their responsibility, but they are not the signature party. Okay, so the coordinator represents and acts on behalf of any other co-beneficiary and coordinates the design and implementation of the action after the grant award. I already said, but it is written here that you will sign a grant contract, which is a contractual obligation. You're entering into contractual relation with the contracting authority. You have certain rights for sure, but you have certain obligations as well. So in that direction, it would be good to observe the contract and the annexes of the contract, especially Annex 2, which are general conditions for all the provisions that will be relevant and that will become very, very relevant if you sign this grant contract. So for you to be aware what waits for you. Okay. The beneficiaries will have to implement the action in accordance with the description of the action. So I already said what you will propose now, in short, in your concept note, will have to be in more details presented in the full application. What will be presented in your full application will become part of your grant contract, and it will become your obligation in line with other terms and conditions of the contract. You will be responsible for implementing the action and you will retain the ownership of its results. So basically, contracting authority is not the one responsible for the implementation of your contract, but the lead applicant, which will become a coordinator in the name of co-applicants or co-beneficiaries at a later stage, and you will be responsible for the implementation of this grant contract. Okay, so we basically came to the end of this second day of training. For sure, we will reply on all your questions, but first, if you're willing just to put emoticon in the chat, if you are okay, not maybe 100% ready, but if you're at least a bit more ready to prepare, to start preparing and even to finalize your concept notes if you have already started to prepare it. So please, if you are willing, just put an emoticon in the chat for us to have some kind of feedback. And just to go through this informative couple of slides, and then we will pass through the question and answer session. So as I mentioned many times yesterday and even today, you have the possibility to use the help desk support for the potential applicants. It is functional under this GST project. We cannot write concept notes instead of you, but we can provide support in quality development of the project proposals, including individual or group consultations, depending on the needs. Help desk activities may take form, one-on-one consultations, group learning sessions, email consultations, so we only reply to your questions or similar. The delivery of trainings and help desk support is taking place in English, but if there is such need for translation to Turkish or Greek, you should announce it and it can be ensured through this project. And this is the email for the help desk service. We are really inviting you, encouraging you to write as soon as possible that you will need such support. in order for us to organize timely in line with the available resources. So preferably you should write by 1st of April to ask such support. And then you will be informed on the available time slot. I also want to stress that there is also a civic space support available for the ones who are not aware of that. So it's another project called Civic Space, and under their project, they have developed the following mainstreaming guidelines on cross-cutting issues. So they can certainly support you in that part of the preparation of the concept note. So there is a gender, ecology, and youth mainstreaming. They are available on this web page of Civic Space, and you can contact them as well to ask for these guides. And this is an email available also here. There are some tentative dates that will be confirmed from the Civic Space for advocacy workshops for potential applicants that are interested in developing or improving advocacy strategies. So these are 2 dates. One session is in Turkish, envisaged to be in Turkish, one in English, on 5th and 7th April. So if you are interested, anyhow, contact directly Civic Space on this email or consult their webpage. What to say? Good luck. I hope we have helped a bit through these sessions that are recorded, so you will be able to look through them again if you will have such need. And you will receive our support through help desk if you will ask timely. So yes, good luck and thank you for your attention, but at last we need to go through the questions and reply.
Yeah, in the meantime, we received few questions. Just let's quickly go through them. As lot 2 requires a co-applicant, does the co-applicant need a PADO registration at the concept note stage? Or can we mention them in the application and include the registration at the full application form stage? PADO registration is obligatory for applicants and co-applicants in principle, but at the concept note stage, only the lead applicants need to be registered in PADO. If you can also register your co-applicants in PADO at the concept note stage, that's fine, but it's not an obligation. But anyhow, if you're invited to submit full application form, you will certainly need to register your co-applicants in PADO as well. So really up to you, you can do it immediately, you know, just to be on the safe side and to finalize it. But I mean, formally speaking, according to the guidelines, this is only an obligation for the lead applicants at this stage of submission of the proposal. Can you please send us the assessment grid? There is no assessment grid as a particular document. This is a part of the guidelines for applicants. You can find the assessment grid published in the guidelines for applicants. You will see the assessment grid for the concept note stage, and you will see the assessment grid for the full application form stage. This is the assessment grid that is going to be used when your projects are assessed. The copies of those grids are also in the presentation which we shared with you, but I mean officially they are a part of the guidelines, and always in your paid calls for proposals they are a part of the guidelines. And then there was a question and the presentation. Please, we've shared the presentation with you on this chat. Just to remind you also, I've shared the link for the evaluation of this training. Please, if you could take a couple of minutes, it's really a very straightforward questionnaire. It will take you a couple of minutes just to complete it. We would like to see if there is anything, you know, like that we should do better, because we still have one training left. For those of you who would perhaps also be willing to listen to this training once again, we will be sending you the videos. And for those of you that are interested in some of the civic space resources that were developed within the Civic Space project, you can see Selena has shared with us the links for the gender mainstreaming guide and the ecology mainstreaming guide, which you can also consult during the preparation of your projects. We are preparing the question and answer document. The contracting authority is going to publish it within the deadline. Probably there will be 2 editions of the question and answer document, so you can also consult them. You now have the templates for the concept notes. And as we've mentioned on several times, we are available to support you through our help desk as well. Also, you can use this activity of our help desk to facilitate some peer-to-peer support among yourselves as well. If there is any message that you would like to share with all of the other interested potential applicants that took part in the info sessions or at the trainings, if you may be looking for a partner or something like that, unfortunately we cannot broker that, we cannot support you in establishing of the partnership, but GST, I mean. But yes, I mean, if you would like us to just convey any message that you may have for the rest of the attendees at these info sessions and at these trainings, we are happy to do that, of course. I think this is the end of the training today. Again, as I said, please complete these evaluation templates, and we wish you good luck. We are ready to support you through the help desk operation as well until the deadline for the concept note submission. I know that this is a lot of information, but at the end of the day, as I mentioned, this is really not rocket science. It's a 5-pager at the end of the day. Try to, and if you see a need for some project in this call, make an effort and submit it. Thank you and have a good afternoon. Thanks. Bye-bye.